And believe me, any USC fans could tell you really quickly that they didn't fix that stuff, because in 2003, USC was number one in both polls at the end of the season and got left out. USC finished the regular season number one in both polls. And even though they weren't in it when they beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl, there was like the majority of AP voters voted USC number one. And even three, even though they're contractually obligated, there were three. I'd love to know this day who those three coaches were. Three coaches voted USC, even though they were contractually obligated to vote for LSU. They actually voted for USC, because that, a lot of people talk about 2004 and 2005 teams, but that Carson Palmer team was just hitting on all cylinders. Mike Williams, that was a really special team.
Carson Palmer?
I'm sorry, 2003 was Liner. My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Palmer. I'm sorry. 2002 was the Orange Bowl with Carson Palmer.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So to your point, final AP poll regular season after the conference championship games, which of course was just the Big 12 and the SEC. But anyway, USC had 42 first place votes, LSU 21, Oklahoma 2 in the AP poll. So twice as many as LSU. And then the final coaches poll of the regular season was USC 37, LSU 18, Oklahoma 8. Wow.
Yeah. It was pretty bizarre at the time. We couldn't believe it. Like, we're all celebrating, and all of a sudden you don't have an invite to the dance. And so at that point, I knew the BCS was the crock of fill in your noun if you want on that one. And then 2008, again, another big USC year, they got left out. It would have been great to see Urban Meyer in Florida play Carroll and USC. Man. But yet another one sent there. And you're talking about, you were talking about all-time defenses. USC did have, they were 9 points a game, that defense. And they had, I think, 8 players drafted in 2009, and then an additional 3 more starters. So basically every starter on that defense was drafted in the NFL. A lot of them played for years and, Pro Bowlers. So, I mean, Clay Matthews, Maluga, and Cushing, all 3 of those guys were on that same defense.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing defense. It would have been a great game. I think it would have been an all-time classic to watch Meyer and Carroll match up on that game.
Yeah. I think both years would have been phenomenal. LSU only beat Oklahoma by a touchdown, but it was one of those games you knew who was going to win the whole game. They had control of the game. LSU and USC would have been phenomenal. Like you say, Florida, Oklahoma. This was a very difficult year for voters. I got to admit, listen to the heavyweights that only had 1 loss. So this is final regular season poll, AP 2008. Florida's 12-1, Oklahoma 12-1, Texas 11-1, Alabama 12-1, USC 11-1, Penn State 11-1, Texas Tech was 11-1, and Boise and Utah were both 12-0. You had a stacked 9 teams that either had no losses, group of 5 type teams, or 1 loss. Heavyweights. That's a strange year. Wow.
Is my mic too loud, Mark?
No, you're fine.
Okay. It was surprising. It was that's the BCS. Now, I mean, I know that the genie's out of the bottle. I know everyone wants 18 rounds of playoffs for college football now. It's getting kind of absurd. But now that it's going to shrink, because I think we all see the writing on the wall, it's probably going to go down to a P. There'll be maybe 4, if not 3 power conferences pretty soon. I mean, that's really what the writing on the wall is. I'm really beginning to wonder if they could just keep it at 4 and then they have the highest at large for that 4th. But again, it would have to be one of the schools that are not in the P3. So to make it legitimized, because the last thing you want, if you're in Alabama or Georgia, you don't want someone being able to stake a claim saying, hey, that's not fair. it wasn't decided on the field. You're going to want, because Georgia or Alabama, you're going to get that guy in the first round, and it's going to be tantamount close to a bye, but it'll be a solid game. I'm guaranteed the number 4 team's not going to be a baby, but you can't have it to where you're locking 80 teams out of a playoff. That there might be some players that they're going to have a good season, and you can't have it to where it's just centered on the Big Ten and the SEC and maybe the ACC, or a combination of the ACC and all the other schools are left. I think you need to have room for that last group to get in, because that makes it a playoff, a very small playoff. But having 3 to 4 teams each, let's say the SEC gets 3 teams in, the Big Ten gets 2 teams in. You're stacking the teams into like an 8-team playoff, and beyond 8 teams. I mean, why do we need more than 8 teams in a college football playoff? It's absolutely a waste of time. I'm still waiting for a good argument where we need to see the 9th best team in the country playing for the national championship. Mark, you know a lot.
No, I don't have that argument for you. It doesn't exist. The only flimsy argument I would have is when we leave it up to people to decide the best teams, are they the 9th best team in the country? Well, according to the rankings, they are. So yeah, when I have put together a 16-team playoff, and when I have taken the standings each year and put that into a 16-team playoff, just to say, look how cool this would be. That's all I'm doing, is saying we'd have a lot of cool matchups. We'd have a lot of Penn State, Florida kind of matchups, or, Oregon and Oklahoma State matchups, and Michigan and NC State matchups, or whatever. There are a lot of cool matchups of a lot of good teams, but not national championship contending teams. Yes, 8 should do it. 8 gets all the conference. I just want to see all the conferences represented, regardless of how good or bad people think they are. Each conference should be represented.
I agree. Well, so you mean 8 teams? So you're going to play. So you're going to have the 8 conference winners. Is that where you would have?
No. Well, currently, the way it's currently constructed, the 5 major conferences.
And sorry, and then in an 8-team playoff?
Yes. 3 at large.
3 at large. Yeah, I mean, again, this 3 at large, and I know I'm not going to have many. I know it's SEC night, or even Big Ten, because actually when I say this, it will go against USC's best interest, because, in some years USC might be that 2nd team or possibly even 3rd team from the Big Ten one day.
Sure.
But I don't think USC should get a shot at the national title if they can't win their own conference.
So you want only conference championships, which I completely respect. And actually, one of my best friends would be right there with you. He's not a big college football fan, but he's like, why are teams that don't win their conference in this thing? So how would you do that, though? Unless we're playing fantasy land and you can construct college football any way you want in terms of conferences, but we can't do that. We got to deal with the reality of currently 5 conferences, and who knows what it's going to be in 5 or 6 years. It could be 4, it could be 3. How do you do that with only conference champions? Let's take the current situation right now. How would you do it?
I would. People are going to laugh. Like, say, well, we've got 9 teams in the SEC that are better than those teams, et cetera, et cetera. At this point, honestly, I think that now more than ever, you do need the 8, because at least for the next couple of years, because everyone's kind of standing pat. You still have
8 coming from that won conferences. Are you talking about the Sun Belt Conference champion, the MAC champion, and
you got to go G5?
Okay, I'm fine with that too.
Because and then I know
it's 10 conferences though, Tim.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest with you, I will admit my knowledge of the G5, of the G5 conferences. I don't know which G5 is better than. I mean, I know American was great. I know year to year, but you just have them. Whatever the highest ranked G5 champion is of those conferences, right? They get in the next, right? So the next 3 are stacked with the 3 highest G5. And that does give you, and then how the conference champions works. So this is where it's going to be a little bit of, there is some subjectivity, but again, it's college football. If you make it completely sterile, it wouldn't be college football, would it? You do need a little bit of controversy. So the ranking would probably be the conference highest ranked champion. The seeding is just straight on rankings. Wherever you fall ranked, that's the way you're going to be, but you're in,
Yeah.
So you have your top 5 from the G5, probably SEC, then a Big Ten, whoever down the line, and then you fill in the last 3 with the champions from the G5, and then we don't have these arguments about Central Florida, etc. And you're right, they are going to get smashed, right? But you know what? If we bring in the 8th ranked team and play them against Georgia last year, they're going to get smashed. We bring in the 8th against Alabama, or you go back, or LSU. They're going to get smashed. Why not give these conferences, open it up to everybody? So at least if you aren't a G5, you're not getting screwed every year. Like, who knows? Maybe they have this Cinderella season and they may not win it, but maybe they win a playoff game or two.
So this last season,
I don't see an argument against it.
So this last season, we would have had, first and foremost, people whose minds are going to be blown, but Georgia would not have made the playoff.
Well, they lost their championship game. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got most likely Alabama's the 1 seed, Michigan's the 2 seed. Let's say, I guess, anyway, I won't go through the seedings, but we've got Alabama from the SEC, Michigan from the Big Ten, Pitt from the ACC, Baylor from the Big 12, Utah from the Pac-12. And then we've got the 3 top G5s, which is obviously going to be Cincinnati from the American. And then most likely it would have been, man, I'd really have to think about it. I guess whoever won, Louisiana or Coastal Carolina, won the Sun Belt. And the Mountain West champ would definitely be in there. So that was who won the San Diego State, Fresno State, whoever won the Mountain West.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't. I don't.
I should know, but I forget. But the Mountain West is a really good conference.
We would know if there was a college playoff like that. And I think they should get that recognition. They play ball. Those kids get beat up at practice just like everybody else. And they play their games, they do everything. And I think that they should be discounted completely. They're in college football. Their division, unless you're going to make a new division where they're not included in it, right? Then that's fine.
Exactly.
They are Division I. They're FBS, whatever you want to call it.
It's an insult to your point, Tim. It's an insult that we patronize them by saying, yeah, you're playing big time college football, but you have no chance in hell of playing in the playoff. I've said this is one of my favorite lines, that the college football playoff selection committee should have to go to every group of 5 school during the summer, during summer workouts, and show up and meet with the team and say, you know what, congratulations, or, good luck this season. We hope you win every game by 50 points, but even if you do, you have no chance in hell of making the playoff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Have a good season.
I mean, it's and I've never heard a good argument for anybody, including, that Georgia team was insane, but there's been a lot of insane great teams that have lost a game along the way and aren't the national champion. What do you say
from USC? Yeah.
Well, what do you say to Alabama? Hey, you guys, good job. You won the SEC. Excellent. You won the toughest conference in the country. You actually beat Georgia, but guess what? We're going to make them. You're 1-1 against Georgia, but we're going to make them the national champion because they won last. I mean, what sense does that even? What sense does that make?
Well, it's the structure of the playoff, though. That's where I disagree with you. I get your point.
Well, the structure
but that happens every year in the NFL. You could lose a regular season game or to a team, but then you play them in the playoff and you split 2 games, but that doesn't mean the regular season is the regular season, which gets us to the point of the playoff. But I get your point.
There's a huge reason why we're college football fans is because, there are some in here that are equally college and then pro. There's some here that like pro more than college. And then there's a lot of us, I think, that are here on a Saturday night tuning into an SEC when you're packed, going to the big, and I'm still talking college football. It's because I'm a college football fan. And the reason why I'm number 1 college football fan is because it's not like the NFL. And the more they make it like the NFL, I'm not saying I'm going to stop watching, but every time they start taking more and more what makes this sport special and not the NFL, because let's face it, I don't care how good it gets. I don't care if they go down to, a power like of 24 great college teams. They all play each other and all that. It's still going to be, the ball's not going to be as good as the NFL. So if your goal is to watch the best football, then you're watching the wrong sport. That's the NFL.
True.
So why are we trying to make college football the NFL? We say, well, they do this in hockey. They do this in baseball. They do this. Yeah, well, we're not hockey. We're not the NFL. Do you know what I mean? As these arguments to me just seem like, are we going to try to ruin college football? Because if we let Fox and ESPN run this thing, they're going to run it into the ground. They're going to commercialize it. It'll be a NASCAR part 2. It's going to be a mess. So college football fans have to start realizing that there's a lot of things that make, the Bulls suck. Who cares? Unless it's the playoffs. the Bulls don't suck. Those kids played hard. They got a bowl game. That should be honored. Yeah, I don't get it. I'd watch
bowl games.
We're all gonna watch Hawaii versus Vanderbilt. That shows you how sick we all are, right? Why are we saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna watch a bowl game"? Yes, you are. You're gonna watch bowl games. You care about bowl games.
It is funny that people talk and they diss the bowl games and all that, but I know this from working in TV for as long as I did, that even though, we're not headed toward a good place when it comes to the bowl games and they seem ridiculous and have ridiculous corporate names and Gasparilla Bowl and all these ridiculous, more people watch college football bowl games than watch anything in college basketball's regular season into the postseason. Like, people watch them. They may not admit it or may make fun of it, but they're watching bowl games.
Yeah, for sure. And then Dustin, it's just USC decides to take a decade off every couple of decades, and that's just USC, unfortunately. So it would have been nice. Well, we could have seen. I don't know about peak SEC, but those Florida teams, again, that 2008 would have been a great USC, or maybe SEC. We could have seen 2003. We could have seen USC versus LSU that year. I don't know how Oklahoma, and this has nothing to do with current events, but I don't know how Oklahoma would squeak into these BCS games and get absolutely romped. Like, we're not maybe the score like you said 2003, but they weren't in that game. 2004, well, why were they in that game? I'm just saying.
03 is the ridiculous example because Oklahoma lost the Big 12 championship game by 4 touchdowns. They lost the Big 12 title game by 35-7. That's how screwed up the BCS computer was. Yes. What's interesting, though, back to the 1 through 8 playoff with the 8 conference champions, is basically what you're going to have about the 4 best teams in the country there. Then maybe an ACC champ or a Pac-12 champ or whatever might be more like the 9th or 10th best team in the country and the 11th best team in the country. And I'm just estimating. And then you're going to have this drop that's going to grab like the 30th best team in the country. That's the American Conference champ. And then it's going to grab like the 50th best team in the country. That's the Sun Belt Conference or the Mountain West Conference. But you know what, Tim, to your point, yeah, we are going to see some blowouts. We're going to see some ridiculous, but we already see them. They might be just a little bit worse. They might be more in the 52-10 range. But the first year, Tim, and I don't know if it's going to take 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that we're all going to be blowing our minds because Louisiana is going to be upsetting Ohio State early in the 4th quarter. And it's going to be like, can you believe this is happening? It's going to be an epic moment in college football history.
Yeah. I would like to see all the teams represented. You either say you guys are, like you said, we're not going to rehash it, but there's no argument. We see the number 4 team get smashed. We saw the number 2 team outmatched last year. No offense, guys out there. So, I mean, to say that team doesn't belong in there. Well, I mean, how many of these teams do belong in there? You know what I mean? If you're going to make it a playoff and not an invitational and not a tournament, the teams need to play their way in. How they do it, you have your first round of the playoffs, which would be the SEC championship game, would be the Big 10 championship game, would be the Pac-12, the Big 12 championship, ACC champ. That's your first round of your playoffs right there. So there you go. So in actuality, you are going to be getting this larger playoff. It's called your conference. And if you win that, you move on. I don't know why this is so hard to swallow. I do know why. It's because some schools know they're probably never going to be at the top, so I hope they can squeak in that 3rd place and then call themselves a playoff team. But in actuality, we're cutting out 80 to 90% of football by saying you're never going to have a chance to get into this thing because, well, we're going to do it this way. So that's all. I really want to talk about that. Remind you that they didn't fix that thing in the BCS in 2003. And it came to bite USC. I mean, can you imagine being the number 1 team in both polls and you're not playing? You get jumped by the 2 and 3 teams and you don't play in the BCS game? That's insane to me.
And if that was just a vote and there was no results to back that up, then I would say, Tim, I get your point, but it's even magnified by Oklahoma losing by 4 touchdowns in the Big 12 championship game. You talk about not honoring a conference championship.
Yeah, that's
Lord.
That's really bad. Yeah. All right. I don't want to take too much of your time. I appreciate, as always, taking my call. Someone in the chat said that USC 2008 was equivalent of Oklahoma State 2011. I don't know what football these guys watch, but USC in 2008 in the Rose Bowl against Penn State, which was a really good Penn State team, very good Penn State team. Pete Carroll, because you got to remember that the coach was Joe Pa. I think it was his last game, possibly. I can't remember.
No, he was still 3 years away, but
okay. But
he had respect for Joe Pa. Yeah,
he respect. But they were up.
Oh, I like 31-7.
Yeah, 31-7 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, the final score was not.
Yeah, they put in some backups, and they got, I think, some junk 13.
It looked respectable. 38-24 was the final. It looked respectable. That was not a game. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
that team was
broken, and that's why I don't want people or voters or committees or anyone doing this crap, because history shows us if we allow people, why not just let them play to get in? Who's arguing that we shouldn't have this? You have your playoff, you have your conference championship games, and then you have 4 more, or 8 more if we're talking about the 8 team. You have 4 more games for the playoffs. You don't need more than 8 teams maximum. I honestly going to argue as these teams, as the conference begin to contract, you're probably going to go down to 4. You don't need more than 4. If your thinking is that the other teams don't matter, make it 8 or make it 4. But don't do this thing where we're putting 2 or 3 teams in from each conference. That's just stupid.